Hi everyone, this is Justin Allen Montgomery with Procourse Start. Procourse Start is the definitive platform for professionals such as medical professionals, legal professionals, finance professionals, tech professionals, any professional who wants to start their own online course business, their own continuing education company. We teach professionals on how to start their own course business so they can build a passive income stream so they can stop exchanging their time for dollars. And that's mainly what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to basically talk about my story on how I was sick of working and killing myself and getting burnt out as a nurse practitioner. I was a nurse practitioner. Well, I still am a nurse practitioner, but I basically retired at the age of 38, 39 because I built an online course business called the Elite Nurse Practitioner that basically gave me an 8-figure net worth in addition to some medical practices that I owned. I'm essentially retired. I'm 40 years old now, but I started Procourse Start to help professionals, start their own online course business. But what happened with me was, I became a nurse practitioner in 2013, and I worked at busy urgent cares, emergency departments. It was a rewarding work. I did enjoy doing what I was doing, but I got burnt out. I got burnt out within probably 4 or 5 years of doing it. I remember one day I was sitting in the ER and it was a busy Saturday. It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I've probably already seen 30 patients. And I'm looking around, I'm looking at the nurses and the ER doctors and, the other PAs and NPs. And I looked at them all and I thought to myself, is this really what I'm going to be doing for the next 30 years of my life? And it really depressed me. I looked around, I saw these older ER docs, 55, 60 years old. Some of the nurses in there who were 50 years old, 55 years old, and they just looked dead. They just looked miserable, They had to be there. They had to work. They had to keep working to pay the bills and to contribute to their 401k and do what society tells you to do. And, I was just sick and tired of living my life that way. I missed having hobbies. I missed hanging out with friends and family. I missed going to bed and not being anxious about things, having to worry about stuff all the time. And I just got burnt out on it. And I needed to figure out a way to develop a passive income stream that would allow me to live my life. So in about 2017, I started some medical practices. I started a medical cannabis clinic, I started a men's health clinic, and I scaled those, and those did really, really well. But at the end of the day, I was still exchanging my time for dollars. I was still having to see patients, I was still having to manage those practices. I eventually was able to hire some other providers and hire an office manager and stuff like that, so I didn't have to do that as much. But I still wanted to build a business of some sort that would, give me my time back, that would make money when I slept, when I would go on vacation. I didn't, I wanted to keep making money. If I wanted to go to Costa Rica for 2 weeks, I could, and I would still be generating income, when you own your own business as a professional, if you're not seeing clients and not seeing patients, then you aren't making money, right? Unless you have other people doing it for you. If you're just a working professional, if you're an engineer, an accountant, or a lawyer, or, a doctor, or a dentist, or whatever, you have to go to work to make money. And if you go on vacation, you have your PTO, but how much PTO do you get a year? 2 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe 6 if you're lucky. Is that really enough time to unwind? Is that really enough time to get back your life in a way, to find some inner peace? For me, it wasn't. Because at the end of the vacation, I was just dreading going back to work. You know what I mean? Like 1 or 2 days before I had to fly back, I'm sitting there just thinking to myself, like, oh God, what's Monday gonna look like? And I was just sick of that dread. I wanted to go on vacation, and when I would leave to go home, I wanted to go home because I missed my bed. I wanted to go back home, and I didn't want to go back home to a job that, I was burnt out in. So anyways, long story short, in 2019, I decided to start my own online education company, utilizing the unique knowledge and skills that I developed as a nurse practitioner entrepreneur. At that point, I've been practicing for 6 or 7 years, and I started multiple practices and multiple businesses. I sold one of them. So I had the skills and the knowledge on how to do that. So I started the Elite Nurse Practitioner. And the goal with the Elite Nurse Practitioner was to teach other nurse practitioners on how to start their own medical practice, basically. And how to learn various niche clinical skills that aren't necessarily taught in school and that aren't really taught in guidelines, more alternative medicine sort of stuff. And so I started the Elite Nurse Practitioner. I launched my men's health course, which was my first course, and it did very, very well. And I saw that there was some light at the end of the tunnel. I saw that I could make money by utilizing and leveraging the skills and knowledge and information that I had, up here. And so I was able to create a business where I could use the skills that I learned and teach other professionals how to do it themselves. And I started that in 2019 and 2020, 21, and 22. And the business, really grew quite a bit. And it finally allowed me to stop exchanging my time for dollars. It allowed me to stop exchanging my life. For every dollar I earned, I was giving away a little piece of my life. You only have a limited amount of time on this planet. And I was giving it away to, employers or disgruntled clients and patients to make, money to live off of. And so I was finally able to break free from that. I was finally able to live a life that I wanted to live on my terms. And I was able to do that when I was, 37, 38 years old. And it was fantastic because I'm still in good shape. I don't want to retire when I'm 55, 65, 70 years old and I have hip arthritis or cervical stenosis and I can barely move my neck. I'm in pretty good shape. And I wanted to take advantage of that. I wanted to live life. Building that business gave me the ability to do that because when you start an online education company or an online course business, it allows you to create a product that sells 24/7, 365 days a year. I would make money on Christmas Day. I would make money when I was on vacation. I would usually make more money on vacation than I was actually spending on my vacation. It was great. And I got to a point in 2022, February 2022 actually, where I quit my job. I just quit. My contract I think it was like a 3 or 6 month notice that I had to give them to leave. I was working in urgent care at the time as a nurse practitioner. And I had to give them a 3 to 6 month notice. I don't remember what it was. And I went into my manager's office and I was like, I'm gonna give you 30 days. And she was like, well, if you only give us 30 days, then you're gonna be unhireable with this entire corporation, which is a nationwide healthcare organization. And I looked at her and I was like, I don't give a shit. I don't care. I don't care if I'm not hireable anymore. I'm giving you 30 days and you're lucky I'm giving you that because I could literally just give you 2 weeks or I could just quit right now. I showed her my bank account. I was kind of being a little pompous about it. And she was like, yeah, why do you work here? I was like, that's a good question. I don't know why I work here. So I gave her 30 days. And I remember the very last day that I was working at that urgent care, we would close at 8 o'clock. And I was just so done. It was a slower day, but I was just sick of being there. I was seeing how much money I was making with my course business and my men's health clinics, and I was just generating this passive income. And I remember the last day I was just like, it was about 5 o'clock, and I walk outside to the reception area, and I tell the nurses and the receptionists, I'm like, I just looked right at them. I was like, close those damn doors. And they were like, excuse me? I was like, close those fucking doors. I'm taking everyone to the brewery, and if anyone says anything, it's on me because I really don't care. So yeah, we closed like 3 hours early, and the director of outpatient services or whoever he was, called me up, and he was angry, and he was like, Justin, you're supposed to close. We closed at 8 o'clock, and you're not supposed to close early, and blah 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 blah. And whatever, I just hung up the phone. I didn't care anymore. He took my $700 bonus away from me that month. Woohoo, I didn't care because I built a life that I was able to live on my own terms. I had a business that was generating passive income for me that allowed me to truly break free. Like, it allowed me to wake up when I wanted to wake up, work on what I wanted to work on. It truly was the most freeing experience of my life. And in 2023, something like that, I think it was mid 2023, I finally hit a target in my brokerage account that would make me fat fire, is the name of it. FIRE means financial independence, retire early. Fat fire means you do that wealthy. I finally hit a number that, I looked at and I was like, I could literally stop working for the rest of my life and generate a passive income just through dividends and interest alone in some bonds and live a very, very, very good life, because I was completely debt free. I own my house, I own my cars, like I didn't have any debt whatsoever. And I hit that number, and it was one of the best moments of my life. And yeah, I still operate the Elite NP. I started the Pro Course Start to help professionals do the exact same thing that that I did, because I realized that it sucks. It really sucks having to exchange your time for every dollar that you make. The family time that you have to take away, the friends that you don't see anymore, the tax on your mental health. I've been there, I get it. I might still be pretty young compared to, many of you listening to me, but I understand, I get it. It's a pretty miserable existence sometimes, and there is a better way. And that is my goal with Pro Course Start, is to have that family time back. You can spend time with your children. I have a 2-year-old and another on the way. And for the last 2 years, I've been able to spend so much time with him because I don't need to have a babysitter. I see him every single day. I wake up with him. I actually am a father, and I'm not going to work, and I'm not missing out on the most important parts of his life up to this point. You never get those moments back. They never come back. And do you want to be giving up these moments in your life that you'll never have again because you have to go slave away at a job? You have to see a patient, you have to see a client, you have to sit in front of a screen and program something. There's a better way, and that's why I started Pro Course Start. I want to teach you how to start an online course business that's profession specific. You are a professional, and I guarantee you have some knowledge, some skills, some information up here in your head that can be utilized to create a course. If you can solve a problem within your profession, if you can develop a solution to that problem and then create a course business to sell it through, you can break free. You can develop a passive income stream. It's not completely passive. I'm not going to say it's 100% passive. It's not. You still have to, you still have to operate the business to an extent. It only takes 10 hours a week if you set it up right, like I teach in the Pro Course Start Blueprint. And it takes about 80 to 120 hours to truly build out the business itself if you follow the steps in the course, all right, that I created. If you follow those steps, you could have a big course business up and running in 2 to 3 months, and you dedicate about 10 hours a week to it, and you could have it up and running. I promise you can, because I've done it. It's really not that hard if you understand how to do it. And that's what I teach in the Blueprint. So if you can dedicate 80 to 120 hours of your time, you can build a business that could literally change your life. And then all it takes is 10 hours a week to keep it operational, because after a certain point, you can utilize virtual assistants and other people to keep the business running for you. And I teach that in the course. So, check out Pro Course Start Blueprint if you're interested in a step-by-step guide. If you're not, then that's fine. Check out ProCourseStart.com. If you're watching it on the site, great, I'm glad you're here. Check out the articles that I write. Check out the videos that I'm recording. They're here to help motivate you, and they're here to help you get started, because I know you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. I came from nothing. I was broke all the way until I was probably about 30 years old. And I grew up in a single parent household in a trailer in Tennessee, poor as hell. I came from nothing, and now I am a multimillionaire. that lives his life on his own terms. So if I can do it, I'm sure as shit you can do it too, okay? So check out the blueprint if you want to. Check out our mastermind if you want to. It's a community of like-minded professionals starting their own online course business. And by all means, explore the website. You know, I write content on a weekly basis and record videos regularly. So, you know, I hope you enjoyed my story. Hope you can resonate with it. By all means, leave a comment, you know, give us a like. You know, email me directly if you want to ask me a question, Justin@procourestart.com. I'd be happy to help. So, all right, you take care. Bye.